My name is Claire Bennett, and for 9 years I believed I was helping my family survive. I didn't know I was helping them build a life that would eventually come crashing down around all of us. It started with a folder. One cold Saturday morning, my mother walked into my kitchen without waiting for an invitation. She dropped a thick blue folder onto the counter, pushed a pen toward me, and said, "Sign this today." I stared at her. "What is it?" "Your house," she replied. "We're putting it into the family trust." Behind her stood my older sister Megan, watching me with folded arms and an expression that already told me what she thought my answer should be. And outside, sitting in the driveway with the engine running, was my father. He never came inside. My mother leaned closer. "Your sister needs help getting settled. After everything this family has done for you, the least you can do is cooperate." I looked at the folder. Then I looked at my mother's face. For the first time in my life, I didn't automatically say yes. No. The word was quiet. But it changed everything. My mother stared at me as if I had spoken another language. Then her hand moved. The slap cracked through my kitchen. For several seconds, I could hear nothing except the high ringing in my ear. Megan picked up the folder and whispered, "You're unbelievable. You've always been the selfish one." My father still didn't come inside. A few minutes later, they left. They thought I would eventually apologize. They thought I would give in. They had no idea that 3 months later, a stranger from a bank would call me with one question that would expose 9 years of lies. And when I answered, I would say 4 words that would change my family's life forever. I already know everything. But before that call happened, before the folder, before the slap, there was a much longer story. A story about a daughter who had spent most of her adult life believing that love meant sacrifice. My name is Claire. I'm 37 years old, and I work as an ultrasound technician at a medical center outside Columbus, Ohio. I've been doing the job for 15 years. People think working with ultrasound machines is mostly about technology. It isn't. The real skill is noticing what doesn't belong. A shadow at the edge of an image. A shape that looks ordinary until you study it carefully. A tiny difference that everyone else might overlook. The truth is usually like that. It doesn't arrive screaming. It sits quietly in the corner and waits for someone to notice. I wish I had used that skill on my own family sooner. My house was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, an old kitchen, and a narrow backyard where I grew tomatoes every summer. But it was mine. I bought it in 2023 after years of saving. The day I received the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room and cried. Not because the house was beautiful. It wasn't. The carpet was worn. 1 bedroom needed painting. The kitchen cabinets had been repaired more than once. But every wall represented something I had earned myself. For the first time, I had a place nobody could tell me I didn't deserve. I remember calling my mother that afternoon. I finally did it. There was silence on the other end. Then she said, "Must be nice." I laughed nervously. "Mom, I'm serious. I bought a house." "Yes, Claire, I heard you." Her voice didn't sound proud. It sounded irritated. Then she added, "Your father and I are still trying to get through our problems, but I'm glad someone in this family has things figured out." I apologized. Even then, I apologized. I said I was sorry if my happiness made her feel bad. That was how deeply I had been trained to think. If something good happened to me, I felt guilty. If I succeeded, I felt selfish. If my family struggled, I believed it was my responsibility to rescue them. And that belief didn't begin in 2023. It began much earlier. In my family, there had always been 2 kinds of children. the one who received, and the one who provided. My sister Megan was the first kind. She was 3 years older than me, confident, beautiful, and effortlessly comfortable asking our parents for whatever she wanted. When Megan got married, our parents paid for nearly everything. The venue, the dress, the reception, the music, even the honeymoon. I was 21 at the time and studying for my medical imaging certification. Instead of enjoying the wedding as a sister, I spent most of the reception carrying trays and helping the caterers. At one point, my mother caught me near the kitchen. "Don't complain," she whispered. "Your sister only gets married once." I looked through the doorway at Megan laughing with her friends. "What about me?" My mother smiled. "You'll have your turn someday." I never did. But I did get the bills. My mother, Evelyn, had always controlled the family's finances. She kept everything in a locked cabinet inside their old house. Insurance documents, bank statements, tax papers, property records. Anything important went into that cabinet. Nobody questioned her. Relatives actually admired her for it. "Evelyn knows how to manage money," they would say. My father, Robert, rarely disagreed with her. He was a mechanic, a quiet man. He wasn't good with emotional conversations, but when I was young, I knew exactly how he loved me. He fixed things. When my bicycle chain broke, he repaired it. When my first car made a strange noise, he spent an entire Sunday underneath it. When I moved into my first apartment, he built me a bookshelf from scratch. He didn't say, "I'm proud of you." He just handed me the finished shelf and said, "Don't put anything too heavy on it." That was my father. Or at least, that was the father I remembered. Then something changed. In 2017, my mother called me and told me to come home immediately. Her voice sounded frightened. When I arrived, she was sitting at the kitchen table with tissues beside her. She was crying. My mother almost never cried. "Claire," she said, "we're going to lose the house." I sat down. "What?" "The bank." She wiped her eyes. "We're behind. We can't catch up." I looked toward the hallway. "Does Dad know?" She grabbed my hand. "No." There was something strange about the urgency in her voice. "He can't know how bad it is. Please, his pride won't survive it." She pushed a bank statement toward me. I looked down at the numbers. My stomach tightened. Then I noticed a date near the bottom. I barely had time to read it before my mother pulled the paper away. "You don't need to worry about the details." "But, Mom..." "Numbers only frighten people who don't understand them." She folded the statement and put it inside her purse. Then she looked directly into my eyes. "I need $650 every month." I blinked. "Every month?" "Yes." "For how long?" "Until we're stable." She squeezed my hand. "You're the responsible one, Claire. You're the only person I can trust." Those words broke through every sensible thought I might have had. I wanted to be the daughter she trusted. So that night I opened my banking app and created an automatic transfer. $650. Every month. The 26th. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was saving my family. I didn't know I was creating a routine that would continue for 9 years. The first payment went through. Then the second. Then the third. Soon, the transfer became part of my life. Paycheck. Mortgage. Utilities. Groceries. Family payment. I picked up extra shifts to make sure it never failed. Weekends. Holidays. Overtime. My coworker Rachel eventually noticed. "You haven't had a free Saturday in almost 3 years," she said one afternoon. I laughed. "It's family." "What exactly are you paying for?" "Helping my parents." She stared at me. "Do they send you statements?" I hesitated. "No." "Receipts?" "No." "Anything?" I shook my head. Rachel leaned back. "Claire, that's not how a debt works." I smiled because I didn't want to hear it. Good daughters don't interrogate their mothers. She didn't argue. But I could tell she didn't believe me. Neither did the quiet voice inside my own head. Every month, the money left my account on the 26th. And 2 days later, my mother called. Always 2 days later. "Thank you, sweetheart. We're getting through it. You have no idea what this means." Her timing was so perfect that eventually I stopped noticing it. I thought consistency meant honesty. I was wrong. Consistency can be a very effective disguise. Meanwhile, my father became distant. His calls became rare. Then they stopped. At family gatherings, he barely spoke to me. Once, I stood beside him in the driveway and asked, "Dad, are we okay?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell your mother I'll check the tires tomorrow." I stared at him. "You can tell her yourself." He walked away. I drove home crying. For years, I blamed myself. Maybe I had become too independent. Maybe I didn't visit enough. Maybe my career embarrassed him. Maybe I wasn't the daughter he wanted. I invented excuses because the truth hurt too much. My father wasn't angry with me. He had been given a version of me that didn't exist. Someone had convinced him that I had become distant, selfish, and difficult. And I had no idea who was telling him those things. Then I bought my house. That should have been the beginning of a new life. Instead, it became the reason my family finally showed me what they really wanted. The first warning came when my sister sent a photograph to the family group chat. It was a picture of a huge new house. Stone exterior. Black shutters. 3-car garage. Massive windows. Megan stood in front of it with her husband, Tyler, smiling as if they had just won the lottery. Her caption read, "Mom and Dad made so many sacrifices for us. Finally, we have our dream home." I stared at the photograph. Then I stared at my banking app. $650. Every month. For years. My mother had told me they were barely surviving. But there was Megan standing in front of a house that looked like something from a magazine. I called my mother. "Mom, where did the money come from?" She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "We managed." "How?" "Claire, you don't need to know everything. I've been sending money for 9 years. Her voice hardened. "And we're grateful." "That isn't what I asked." Silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You need to learn to trust your family." The call ended. That night, I went back through my bank records. I stared at the automatic transfer. My finger hovered over the cancel button. For the first time, I seriously considered stopping it. Then I remembered my mother crying at the kitchen table. I remembered my father's silence. I remembered every time she told me I was the responsible one. So I didn't cancel it. I gave her 1 more month. That decision would haunt me. Because the following December, she invited me to dinner. The new house was even more impressive in person. A huge dining room. A marble kitchen. A finished basement where my parents had their own living area. My mother stood at the head of the table holding a glass of wine. To family, she said. Everyone raised their glasses. To sacrifice. I smiled weakly. But something didn't feel right. Later, I found my mother alone in the hallway. Family photographs covered the wall. Megan's wedding. Megan's graduation. Megan's vacations. My parents with Megan. Megan with her husband. I looked closer. There wasn't a single recent photograph of me. Not one. It was as if someone had quietly erased me from the family history. I turned toward my mother. Mom, where did the money for this house come from? Her expression changed instantly. The warmth disappeared. We handled our finances. But you said you were struggling. We were. The old house sale didn't cover everything? She stared at me. Then she said softly, "You don't need explanations. You need trust." That sentence stayed with me. On the drive home, I opened my banking app again. The next $650 transfer was scheduled for the following week. This time, I almost canceled it. Almost. But I didn't. I wish I had. Because 1 month later, my mother came to my house. And this time, she wasn't asking for money. She was demanding ownership. The knock came just after 8 in the morning. 3 sharp hits. Then the doorbell. Then another knock. I opened the door. My mother walked straight past me. Megan followed. Through the window, I saw my father's truck parked at the curb. The engine was running. He stayed inside. My mother placed a folder on my kitchen counter. Sign it. I looked at her. What? Transfer the house. My heart began pounding. What are you talking about? It's for the family. No. She pointed toward the folder. Megan needs help. You have a stable job. You have a house. She has children and expenses. I stared at my sister. Megan shrugged. You can always buy another house. I felt something inside me go completely still. No. My mother picked up the pen. You owe us. I've been paying you for 9 years. You could have done more. The room became silent. Then I said the one thing I had never said to her. No, Mom, I have done enough. Her face changed. And I realized too late that the woman standing in my kitchen wasn't the mother who had cried over the old bank statement. She was someone else. Someone who had been waiting years for me to stop obeying. And when I refused to sign, she raised her hand. The slap came so fast I barely saw it. My ear rang. My sister called me selfish. My father watched from the truck. And when they finally drove away, I stood alone in my kitchen with one thought repeating in my mind. If they were willing to hit me over a house I had paid for myself, what else had they done with my name? That night, I opened my laptop. For the first time in 9 years, I searched through every single payment I had ever made. And what I found was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. The house was completely silent, but my mind wouldn't stop moving. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at 9 years of bank transactions. At first, I thought I would find exactly what I expected. A few dozen payments. Maybe some missing months. Maybe a mistake. Instead, I found a pattern. One transfer every month. The same amount. $650. The same day. The 26th. For 9 years. I downloaded every statement I could access and began putting the payments into a spreadsheet. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Year after year. Row after row. By the time I reached the end, the spreadsheet contained 108 separate transfers. The total stopped me cold. $70,200. I leaned back in my chair. $70,200. That was more than a number. That was 9 years of weekends. 9 years of skipped vacations. 9 years of saying no when friends invited me somewhere. 9 years of picking up extra shifts because I was afraid the payment might fail. And suddenly, one question became impossible to ignore. Where had all that money gone? I opened the oldest statement again. Then another. Then another. Every payment had gone to an account my mother controlled. Not the mortgage company. Not a bank. Not a debt collector. Her account. My stomach tightened. I had never noticed it before, because I had never looked closely enough. My mother had always told me the money was going toward my parents' house. But there was no mortgage payment attached to my transfers. No loan number. No lender. No account reference. Nothing. I whispered to myself, what have I been paying for? I was about to search the county property records when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Hello? Good afternoon. May I speak with Claire Bennett? This is Claire. My name is Dana Brooks. I'm calling from the verification department at Meridian Home Lending. I frowned. I don't have an account with Meridian. I understand. You're not listed as the borrower. Something about that sentence made me sit up. Then why are you calling me? There was a pause. I need to confirm some information regarding a property. What property? She read out my address. Every muscle in my body went tense. That is my house. Yes, ma'am. Why are you asking about it? Another pause. Then she said, can you confirm that you currently rent the property from Robert and Evelyn Bennett for $1,900 a month? I couldn't breathe. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I had misunderstood her. What did you say? Do you rent the property from Robert and Evelyn Bennett? No. My voice sounded strange even to me. I own it. The woman stopped speaking. I purchased it myself. Her typing became faster. I see. No, I said. You don't see. What is this about? I need to verify one more thing. Her tone had changed. What? Were you aware of a residential lease connected to this address? No. Have you ever signed a lease with your parents? No. Have you ever authorized them to represent you as their tenant? Absolutely not. Silence. Then Dana said carefully, thank you. That's important. My hands were shaking. Why? I can't discuss the borrower's file with you, but the information you've provided doesn't match what we have. What do you have? I've already said more than I'm permitted to. She gave me a reference number. Then she told me someone would follow up in writing. Before ending the call, I asked one final question. Dana, why does your company think my parents are collecting $1,900 a month from me? She didn't answer. The call ended. I stared at the phone. My house. A lease. $1,900 a month. My parents' names. None of it made sense. Then I remembered the folder. The one my mother had brought to my kitchen. The one she demanded I sign. I opened the memory in my mind and replayed everything. Her insistence. Megan's presence. My father's truck outside. The slap. The folder. What if the folder wasn't about transferring my house? What if that wasn't the first document they had prepared? What if it was only the document they wanted me to sign next? I called the only person I could think of who might understand what was happening. My cousin Daniel was a real estate attorney. He lived a few hours away and rarely involved himself in family disputes. But he understood property records better than anyone I knew. When he answered, I said, "Daniel, I need you to listen carefully." He immediately recognized the seriousness in my voice. What happened? I told him everything. The payments. The bank call. The supposed lease. The $1,900. The folder. The slap. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he asked, "Have you contacted your mother?" No. Good. Why? Because if something is wrong with that property record, you don't want to warn anyone before we know exactly what we're dealing with. I swallowed. Do you think my parents forged something? I don't know. That answer frightened me more than if he'd said yes. He continued. I'm going to check the county records. Don't delete anything. Don't edit the spreadsheet. Keep every bank statement. I have everything. Good. And Claire? Yes. Don't confront them. I looked toward the window. Their house was 40 minutes away. I had never wanted to drive somewhere so badly in my life. I won't. Daniel promised to call me back. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a screenshot. At the top was the official county record. My parents' old mortgage. And underneath it was something I couldn't understand. The mortgage had been completely paid off years earlier. I read the date again. June 2015. I checked the year twice. 2015. I was staring at the screen when Daniel sent another message. Claire, your parents didn't have the mortgage they told you about. My throat tightened. What do you mean? They paid it off in 2015. I stopped breathing for a moment. My mother had come to me in 2017 crying about a mortgage that was supposedly threatening to take their house. But the mortgage had been gone for almost 2 years. I sat there in silence. Then another thought hit me. The $650 payments began in 2017. 2 years after the mortgage was paid. I felt physically sick. Daniel, I typed, what did I actually pay for? His answer came quickly. I don't know yet. Then another message. But I think you need to find out. I opened the spreadsheet again. 108 payments. $70,200. My mother hadn't simply lied about one emergency. She had created an entire story around a debt that no longer existed. And I had believed it. Every month. For 9 years. I looked at the date of the first payment. February 2017. Then I remembered something. The statement my mother had shown me that first night. The tiny date in the corner. I hadn't thought about it in years. But suddenly, I could see it clearly. 2009. The document had been 8 years old when she showed it to me. She hadn't shown me a current debt. She had shown me an old one. A debt that had once been real. And somehow convinced me it was still alive. I put my hand over my mouth. She used an old statement. Daniel called immediately. How sure are you? I remember the date. Then we need to verify it. He searched the records again. The old mortgage had been satisfied in 2015. There was no active mortgage matching the story my mother had given me. None. My entire body felt cold. For years, I'd thought my mother was desperate. Now I wondered whether desperation had ever been part of the story at all. I didn't call her. I didn't call Megan. I didn't call my father. Instead, I printed everything. The bank statements. The spreadsheet. The county record. The payment history. I placed the papers inside a waterproof document folder. Then I waited. 3 weeks passed. Nothing happened. No calls. No messages. No explanation. Then, on a Tuesday evening, my phone lit up. Mom. I stared at her name. My thumb hovered over the screen. I almost let it ring. Then I answered. Hello? Her voice was warm. Too warm. Sweetheart. I closed my eyes. She sounded exactly like the mother I remembered. I've been thinking about us. I said nothing. Families fight, she continued. What matters is what we do afterward. Still nothing. She never mentioned the slap. Not once. She never apologized. She never asked whether my face still hurt. It was as though that moment had never happened. Then she said, Your sister misses you. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, Does she? Of course. What about Dad? He's upset. About what? There was a pause. Everything. I understood then. They weren't calling because they were sorry. They were calling because something had changed. They were afraid. I asked, Why are you really calling? Her voice became quieter. We're family, Claire. That isn't an answer. She sighed. We should have dinner. With everyone? Yes. When? Soon. I looked at the folder sitting beside me. Fine. She sounded relieved. Sunday. Okay. And Claire? Yes? Don't bring anything complicated. I looked at the documents. I won't. She hung up. I sat alone in my kitchen. For 9 years, my mother had controlled the conversation. She decided what I knew. She decided what I gave. She decided what I was allowed to question. But now I had something she didn't know I had. Proof. And for the first time, I understood something important. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to destroy my family. I only needed to stop protecting the lie. I opened the folder and counted the documents. The spreadsheet. The payment history. The county record. And the bank's reference number. 4 pieces of paper. 9 years of silence. I closed the folder. Sunday was coming. And for the first time in my life, I was going to sit at my family's table without asking permission to speak. The truth was coming with me. By Sunday morning, I had rehearsed what I was going to say at least 20 times. Every version sounded wrong. In one version, I screamed. In another, I cried. In another, I simply stood up and walked away. But the truth was, I didn't want revenge. I wanted an explanation. I wanted to know how my own mother had looked into my eyes for 9 years and accepted money she knew I believed was saving the family. And more than anything, I wanted to know what that mysterious lease was doing in a bank file. The family dinner was scheduled for 6. At 5:30, I placed 3 things inside my bag. The spreadsheet, the county property record, and the bank's letter. I left the rest at home. Daniel had told me not to overwhelm them with documents. Let them talk first, he had said. People reveal more when they think they're still in control. I understood what he meant. My mother had spent years controlling the story. So I was going to let her tell it one more time. I drove to my parents' new house just before 6. The house looked even larger than I remembered. Warm lights glowed through the windows. Cars filled the driveway. For a moment, I almost turned around. Then I remembered the slap. Not the pain. The feeling afterward. The realization that the person who had hit me wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing what I could provide. I stepped out of my car. The front door opened before I reached it. My mother smiled. Claire. Mom. She hugged me. I stood still. Her arms tightened around me as if we were the closest mother and daughter in the world. Then she whispered, "I'm glad you came." I looked at her. So am I. Her smile flickered. She didn't know what I meant. Inside, everyone was already seated. My father sat near the end of the table. He looked older than I remembered. My sister Megan sat beside her husband, Tyler. My Aunt Rebecca was there too, along with her husband. Everyone smiled politely. Everyone except my father. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "You look tired." "I've been working." He nodded. Neither of us said anything else. Dinner began. For 20 minutes it was painfully ordinary. People talked about work, the weather, Megan's children, the new kitchen. My mother kept smiling. Too much. It was the kind of smile people wear when they have already planned how the evening will end. After dessert, the children were sent upstairs. The plates were cleared. Then my mother stood. She placed both hands on the back of her chair. "Tonight," she said, "is about moving forward." I watched her carefully. "We've all made mistakes." Megan lowered her eyes. My father looked at his hands. My mother continued. "Family has always been the most important thing to me." I almost laughed. She talked about sacrifice, about difficult years, about parents doing everything possible for their children. Then she said the sentence I had been expecting. Sometimes, one person has to make a small sacrifice so everyone else can remain secure. She turned toward me. Claire has always been strong. I felt every eye at the table move in my direction. She has a good job. She owns property. She has stability. My mother reached beside her chair and lifted the blue folder. My stomach tightened. It was the same folder. The one she had brought to my house. She placed it on the table. "You remember this?" I didn't answer. She pushed it toward me. "This is simply a formal arrangement." I looked down at the folder. No. Her smile disappeared. "What?" "No." The room became silent. My mother glanced at the others. "I think you're misunderstanding." "I understand perfectly." She lowered her voice. "Claire, don't make this difficult." I opened my bag. My father's eyes followed my hands. I pulled out the first document. Not the bank letter. Not the county record. The spreadsheet. I placed it on the table. The paper slid quietly across the polished wood. Before I sign anything, I said, I'd like everyone to see what I've already paid. Nobody moved. My brother-in-law Tyler picked it up. His eyes moved down the page, then stopped. $650. He looked at the total. Every month? For 9 years. My mother's expression hardened. I never asked her for money. I looked at her. You didn't? No. She turned toward everyone. If Claire chose to help her parents, that was her decision. I opened my phone. Then let's talk about your calls. Her face changed. I scrolled through my call history. I marked several. I looked at my father. Dad, do you remember June 2019? He frowned. No. Mom called me and said the bank had threatened foreclosure again. My mother opened her mouth. I continued. She said my payment had saved the month. My father looked at her. I moved to another date. February 2022. Mom called crying. She told me that without me, you would lose everything. Nobody spoke. Then I looked at another entry. October 2024. She told me the bank people had no hearts, but her daughter did. My mother shook her head. You're twisting conversations. I'm not. I looked at the spreadsheet. The money left my account on the 26th of every month. Then I looked at my mother. You called me 2 days later every single time. My Aunt Rebecca slowly lowered her fork. My father stared at my mother. Evelyn. She didn't look at him. Phone calls proved nothing. No, I said. They don't. I reached into my bag again. This time, I pulled out the county record. I placed it in front of my father. That's why I checked the property records. He picked up the page. His eyes moved across it, then stopped. What is this? Your mortgage record. My mother stood suddenly. Claire, that's private. It was public. My father continued reading. His face slowly changed. Paid in full, he whispered. He looked at the date. 2015? Nobody moved. My mother said, that document is old. Yes, I replied. That's the point. My father looked at her. You told Claire we were behind in 2017. My mother said nothing. You told her the bank was threatening the house. Still nothing. My father's voice became quieter. Was there a mortgage in 2017? My mother finally answered. We had other debts. That isn't what I asked. She looked away. The room felt smaller. I could hear the wall clock. Tick. 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 Then my mother said, You don't understand what happened. I understand enough. I opened the bank letter. And that was when my sister's husband noticed the logo. What bank is that? Meridian Home Lending. My mother froze. Tyler looked at Megan. Megan looked at my mother. My father slowly turned toward me. Why would a bank be writing to you? I placed the letter on the table. Because apparently, according to their records, I rent my own house. Silence. My father stared at me. What? I slid the letter toward him. They have a lease showing that my parents rent my house from me for $1,900 a month. My mother went completely still. Megan whispered, What? I looked directly at her. Did you know? No. My mother interrupted. She doesn't know anything about this. I looked at my mother. Then maybe you should explain it. She didn't. My father's hands tightened around the letter. Evelyn. She finally looked at him. I can explain. Then explain. Her voice became defensive. It was part of a financial arrangement. With Claire's house? It was temporary. Was it real? She didn't answer. My father looked at me. Did you sign anything? No. Did you agree to rent your house to us? No. He looked back at my mother. Then whose signature is on that lease? My mother didn't speak. That was the moment I knew. I had already known something was wrong. But that silence confirmed it. Someone had signed my name. And my mother knew exactly who. Megan suddenly stood. This is ridiculous. I looked at her. Is it? You're making Mom look like a criminal. I didn't make the lease. You don't even know what happened. I know my signature. My mother snapped, Enough! Everyone went silent. She looked at me with the same expression she'd worn the day she slapped me. For the first time, though, I wasn't afraid. I was sad. Because behind all the documents and numbers was something much worse. My mother had looked at me for years and decided that my trust was something she could spend. She could have asked me for help. I would have helped her. She could have told me the truth. I would have listened. But she chose a lie. And then she built more lies around it. I said quietly, Mom, I could have forgiven the money. She stared at me. I could have forgiven you for needing help. My voice began to shake. But I don't know how to forgive you for making me believe I was saving a house that wasn't even in danger. My father closed his eyes. Megan sat down. Nobody defended my mother. For the first time that evening, she looked genuinely frightened. Then my phone rang. The room went silent. I looked at the screen. Daniel. I answered. Hello? His voice was low. Claire, are you with your family? Yes. Good, don't sign anything. I won't. He paused. There's something else you need to know. I stood up and walked toward the hallway. What? We found the document. What document? The lease. My heart stopped. Daniel, I have a copy. No, he said. The bank has the original scan. I gripped the phone. Is my signature on it? Yes. Is it real? No. I closed my eyes. Then he said the words that made my blood run cold. Claire, whoever created that lease wasn't just trying to make your parents look like tenants. What were they trying to do? They were using your property to support their loan application. I looked back toward the dining room. My mother was watching me. She couldn't hear Daniel. But somehow she knew. Daniel, I whispered, what happens now? The bank is reviewing the entire file. Could my parents lose the house? If the loan was based on false information, there could be serious consequences. I swallowed. Do they know? They probably do now. I ended the call. When I returned to the table, my mother was standing. Who was that? I looked at her. My attorney. Her face went pale. And for the first time in 9 years, my mother didn't tell me what to do. She didn't call me sweetheart. She didn't tell me to trust the family. She simply sat down. My father looked at me. What happens next? I looked around the table. I don't know. Then I placed the bank letter in front of him. But I think we're finally going to find out the truth. And nobody at that table understood yet that the dinner wasn't the end of the family's secret. It was only the moment the secret finally became impossible to hide. The drive home after that dinner felt longer than usual. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. For years, I had imagined that discovering the truth would make me angry enough to finally stop caring. Instead, I realized how much I still cared. That was the cruelest part. You can discover that someone has lied to you and still wish they hadn't. You can know someone hurt you and still remember every birthday cake they ever made for you. You can choose to walk away and still hope they turn around and call you back. When I got home, I placed the blue folder on the kitchen counter. Then I noticed something. My hands were shaking. I hadn't noticed it at dinner. I leaned against the counter and took a deep breath. My phone rang. Daniel. Are you home? Yes. How did dinner go? I laughed quietly. Exactly as badly as you expected. He was silent for a moment. Did they admit anything? Not directly. But my father finally asked questions. That matters. I don't know. It does. I sat down. Daniel, what happens now? He exhaled. The bank will investigate the file. Your statement is important because you have denied the lease and provided evidence that you own the property. What about my parents? That depends on what the investigation finds. I looked at the documents. And my money? That's a different issue. I knew what he meant. The bank could investigate the fraudulent lease. It couldn't undo 9 years of my life. I ended the call and sat in the dark for a long time. Then I opened my banking app. The old automatic transfer was still there. $650. The next payment was scheduled for the following week. I stared at it. For 9 years, I had never questioned that button. It had become part of my identity. Good daughter. Responsible daughter. Reliable daughter. The woman who always paid. I pressed cancel. The app asked, "Are you sure?" I almost laughed. 9 years of obedience reduced to one little question on a screen. I pressed yes. The transfer disappeared. I expected relief. Instead, I cried. Not because I wanted to keep paying. Because I finally understood what the money had represented. I hadn't been paying for a house. I had been paying for belonging. And now I was choosing myself. The next morning, I received an email from Meridian. They wanted written confirmation. I forwarded everything to Daniel. He helped me prepare a formal response. There was no anger in it. No accusations. Only facts. I owned the property. I had never rented it to my parents. I had never signed the lease. I had never authorized anyone to sign on my behalf. And I had never received the supposed $1,900 monthly rent. Daniel sent the response. Then we waited. 2 days later, the bank called. A senior investigator was on the line. "Ms. Bennett, we've reviewed your statement." I gripped the edge of my desk. Yes? There are significant discrepancies in the loan file connected to your parents' property. I said nothing. The lease involving your residence is one of several documents under review. My heart began beating faster. Several? Yes. What other documents? I can't disclose everything. That answer frightened me. But then he said something that made me realize the situation was bigger than I had understood. The income reported in the application includes rental income that appears inconsistent with available property records. The $1,900? Yes. I closed my eyes. So they used my house to make their financial situation look better? That's one of the issues being examined. And what happens to them? I can't predict the outcome. I understood. The bank wasn't threatening them. It was investigating them. That was worse. After the call, Daniel phoned me. They're in serious trouble, he said. What do I do? Nothing. Nothing? Don't contact the bank repeatedly. Don't threaten your parents. Don't post anything. Don't destroy anything. Let the process happen. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Then he asked, "What do you want?" I looked around my little kitchen. The kitchen my mother had once treated like something I didn't deserve. I want the truth. And after that? I thought for a long time. I want my life back. 3 weeks passed. My mother didn't call. Neither did Megan. My father called once. He didn't speak for several seconds. Then he said, "I owe you an apology." I didn't answer immediately. For what? For believing things about you. My throat tightened. What things? He sighed. Your mother told me you refused to help us. I closed my eyes. She told me you didn't care. I didn't interrupt. She said you had become selfish after buying your house. My eyes filled with tears. She said you were embarrassed by us. I whispered, "Dad." I believed her. There was pain in his voice now. I shouldn't have. No. I stopped calling because I thought you didn't want me. I looked toward the window. For years, I had wondered why my father stopped loving me. Now I knew. He had been given a different version of his daughter. A daughter who didn't exist. A daughter who was selfish. A daughter who refused to help. A daughter who abandoned her parents. And he had punished the real me for the actions of someone my mother invented. I should have asked you, he said. Yes. I should have listened. Yes. He was quiet. Then he said, "Can I come see you?" I hesitated. I don't know. That's fair. He didn't argue. That was the first time in years my father had respected one of my boundaries. A week later, he came. He parked outside my house. When I opened the door, he was holding a small cardboard box. He looked embarrassed. What is that? Something I should have given you years ago. He handed it to me. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Me at 8 years old. Me at 12. My first school play. My high school graduation. My father teaching me to ride a bicycle. I picked up one photograph. I was sitting on the hood of his old truck. He was standing behind me with one hand on my shoulder. I forgot I had these, he said. I looked at him. No, you didn't. He lowered his eyes. I kept them. I started crying. He did too. Then he said something I will never forget. She didn't just take your money, Claire. He swallowed. She took you away from me. I looked at him. And I let her. For the first time, my father wasn't asking me to forgive him. He was simply admitting that he had failed me. That mattered. But forgiveness wasn't automatic. Love doesn't erase consequences. And apologies don't rebuild trust overnight. A few days later, Daniel called again. The bank made a decision. My stomach tightened. What decision? The restructuring was denied. I sat down. Because of the discrepancies. Yes. What happens now? The loan remains due under its existing terms. I knew what that meant. My parents couldn't afford it. The house they had bought for Megan's new life was now a financial burden they couldn't hide. Then Daniel said something else. There is also a fraud flag attached to the file. I closed my eyes. So it's over. For them, the financial part is just beginning. The consequences didn't arrive like thunder. They arrived slowly. Quietly. First, the bank stopped cooperating with their requested restructuring. Then creditors began asking questions. Then my parents had to provide documentation explaining income that didn't exist. The $1,900 monthly rent from a tenant who actually owned the property. The lease bearing my name. The financial statements. The contradictions. Everything began collapsing under its own weight. And then, one Tuesday morning, my Aunt Rebecca called. Her voice was unusually quiet. They're selling the house. I sat still. Already? They have to. I looked out at my small backyard. The garden. The old fence. The place I had fought so hard to keep. What about Megan? She moved out. Where? She's staying with Tyler's parents for now. I closed my eyes. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sad. Because I had once wanted my sister to have a beautiful life. I just hadn't known someone else was paying for it. Later that week, Megan called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Hello? She was crying. I didn't know. I said nothing. I swear, Claire, I didn't know about the lease. I believe you. I thought you hated us. I never hated you. She began crying harder. Mom told me you refused to help. I know. She said you were jealous of the house. I know. I called you selfish. Yes. There was a long silence. Then she said, I'm sorry. I looked down at the photograph my father had left. You should be. She was quiet. Then I said something I hadn't expected to say. But I'm not asking you to spend the rest of your life apologizing. What do you want? I thought about it. I want you to question things. What? When someone tells you a story about another person, ask yourself what evidence you have. She didn't answer. I was your sister, I continued. You believed someone else's version of me without ever asking me. I know. You don't owe me punishment. I paused. You owe yourself the courage to question the next story. She cried quietly. And for the first time, I understood that healing wasn't about making everyone suffer as much as I had. It was about refusing to become like the people who had hurt me. Weeks later, the large house was listed for sale. The beautiful kitchen. The expensive fixtures. The 3-car garage. The rooms my parents had once shown off with pride. All of it had a price. But the most expensive thing in that house had never been the stone countertops. It had been the lie. My mother moved into a smaller place. She didn't call me. I didn't call her. Not yet. My father continued visiting. Sometimes we talked about ordinary things. Cars. Work. The weather. Sometimes we talked about the past. But we never pretended everything was fixed. One evening he asked me a question. Do you think you'll ever forgive your mother? I looked at him. I don't know. He nodded. That's fair. I might. I paused. But forgiveness doesn't mean she gets access to my life again. He looked at me thoughtfully. I understand. That was the difference between the old version of my family and the new one. Boundaries were no longer considered betrayal. Truth was no longer considered disrespect. And saying no longer made me a bad daughter. Months later, I stood in my kitchen one morning, making coffee. The sunlight came through the window. My phone remained silent. No payment reminder. No anxious call. No emergency. No guilt. Just silence. And for the first time, the silence felt peaceful. I opened my banking app. The $650 transfer was gone. 9 years. 108 payments. $70,200. I stared at the number one final time. Then I closed the app. I realized something that had taken me years to understand. Helping your family is an act of love. But allowing someone to manipulate you is not. Sacrifice can be beautiful when it is freely chosen. It becomes something else when fear is used to force it. I had spent 9 years believing that being a good daughter meant carrying everyone else's problems. It didn't. Being a good person also means telling the truth. It means protecting yourself. It means knowing when love requires a helping hand, and when love requires a boundary. And sometimes the strongest thing you can say to the people you love is not yes. It's, I can't do this anymore. Because the moment you stop confusing guilt with love, you finally become free. The months after the house was sold were quieter than I expected. There were no dramatic phone calls. No shouting. No surprise visits. Just a strange, uncomfortable silence where my family's chaos had once been. And somehow, that silence forced me to face something I had avoided for years. What happened to my family wasn't only about money. It was about trust. My mother had lied to me. My father had believed those lies. My sister had accepted them without asking enough questions. And I had spent years believing that keeping everyone happy was the same thing as keeping everyone together. It wasn't. One Saturday morning, my father came to my house carrying a small envelope. He stood on the porch for several seconds before knocking. When I opened the door, he held it toward me. I've been waiting for the right time. I took it. What is it? Sare? Open it. Inside was a cashier's check. I stared at the amount. $7,800. I looked up. Dad. It isn't enough. You don't owe me this. I know. Then why? He took a breath. Because I should have protected you. I shook my head. You didn't know. I knew enough to ask questions. That silenced me. He continued. I spent years thinking you had abandoned us. Every time I saw you, I was angry, but I never once asked you why. He looked toward the street. I trusted the person closest to me instead of speaking to my daughter. I folded the check back into the envelope. I can't take this. You can. I don't want your money. It's not payment. Then what is it? He looked directly at me. An admission. My eyes filled with tears. He continued. I know I can't return 9 years. I can't return the weekends you worked. I can't return the things you didn't buy because you thought we needed the money. He swallowed. But I can at least stop pretending it didn't happen. I took the envelope. Not because it erased anything. It didn't. I took it because I understood what he was trying to do. He wasn't buying forgiveness. He was finally taking responsibility. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded. Then he surprised me. "Your mother wants to see you." I froze. "When?" "Whenever you're ready." "Does she know I'm not giving her money anymore?" He gave a sad smile. "She knows." "Does she understand why?" "I don't know." I looked down. "I don't think I'm ready." "I'll tell her." He turned to leave. Then he stopped. "Claire?" "Yes?" "You don't have to be ready just because she's your mother." And then he walked away. Those words stayed with me. Because for years I'd believed that being related to someone meant they automatically deserved access to you. It doesn't. Family can be earned. Trust can be earned. Respect can be earned. Even forgiveness can be earned. A few weeks passed. Then I received a letter. No phone call. No unexpected visit. Just a handwritten envelope. My mother's handwriting. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it. There were only 2 pages. She didn't make excuses. That surprised me. She didn't blame the bank. She didn't blame Megan. She didn't blame my father. She wrote about the first time she asked me for $650. She admitted she had known the old mortgage was already paid. She admitted she had used an outdated statement because she knew I would believe her. She admitted that the monthly transfers eventually became something she depended on. Then she wrote something that hurt more than everything else. "I convinced myself that because you were my daughter, I was entitled to your sacrifice." I stopped reading. I put the letter down. I walked to the window. Outside, my tomato plants were beginning to grow again. I thought about how many years I had spent trying to prove that I was a good daughter. And suddenly I realized something. I didn't have to prove it anymore. I went back to the letter. The final paragraph said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I only want you to know that I finally understand why you stopped." I folded the letter. I didn't respond. Not immediately. Because sometimes silence isn't punishment. Sometimes silence is space. And I needed space to decide who I wanted to be after everything that had happened. Megan and I slowly began speaking again. It wasn't easy. The first few conversations were awkward. She apologized more than once. I accepted her apology without pretending the past didn't happen. One afternoon, she came to my house. She stood in the kitchen looking around. "I never realized how much you loved this place." I smiled. "I didn't either." She laughed softly. Then she said, "Mom told me you were obsessed with money." I raised an eyebrow. "I sent her $70,200. Megan looked down. "I know." She took a breath. I was wrong. I didn't say anything. "I should have asked you." "Yes." "I should have wondered why you were supposedly refusing to help when you were actually helping." "Yes." She nodded. "I can't change that." "No. But I can change what I do next." That mattered more than another apology. Because an apology only becomes meaningful when behavior changes afterward. My sister eventually found a smaller apartment. Nothing like the house she had once lived in. No marble kitchen. No huge garage. No expensive landscaping. But it was hers. She started working more hours. Tyler did too. They adjusted. It wasn't glamorous. But it was honest. And there was something strangely beautiful about watching them rebuild their lives without pretending everything was perfect. My mother struggled the most. She had lost the house. She had lost control over the family. And she had lost the financial system she had built around my guilt. For the first time, she had to live within reality. My father told me she began keeping careful records. Every bill. Every expense. Every payment. He said she had become almost obsessive about receipts. I understood why. The woman who had once hidden the truth inside paperwork was now surrounded by paperwork she could no longer manipulate. Eventually, my mother asked me to meet her. I agreed. Not at her house. Not at mine. A quiet cafe halfway between us. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a corner table. She looked smaller. Older. Not physically. Emotionally. I sat across from her. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, she said, "You look well." "I am." She nodded. "I've missed you." I didn't answer. She looked down at her coffee. "I know I don't have the right to say that." "You can say it." She looked up. "Do you hate me?" "No." Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought you did." I was angry. "I know." I was hurt. "I know. But hate would mean I want something bad to happen to you." She wiped her cheek. "I don't." "What do you want?" I thought about it. "I want you to stop deciding what I owe you." She nodded. "I will. I want you to stop telling people stories about me that aren't true." "I will. And I don't want money to be the reason we speak." She looked down. "I understand." For a moment, I thought that was all we needed to say. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." This apology was different. There was no demand attached to it. No request. No but. Just sorry. I didn't hug her. I wasn't ready. But I reached across the table and touched her hand. It was the first time I'd touched her voluntarily in months. She began crying. So did I. We didn't fix 9 years that afternoon. We didn't become the family we had once been. Instead, we began something new. Something smaller. Something honest. And maybe that was better. A few months later, I received a letter from Meridian saying the matter involving my property had been formally separated from my parents' financial obligations. My ownership was clear. My name was removed from any mistaken documentation. The house was safe. Mine. Completely mine. I framed the document. Not because I wanted a trophy. Because every time I looked at it, I wanted to remember one thing. Never sign away something just because someone you love tells you that love requires it. My father kept visiting. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he brought nothing. Sometimes we sat outside drinking coffee. One afternoon, he looked around my backyard and said, "Your mother used to tell me you never helped us." I smiled sadly. "I know." He shook his head. "She was wrong." "Yes." He looked at me. "I was wrong too." I nodded. Then he said something that made me laugh. "You know, your tomatoes are terrible." I stared at him. "What?" "They're small." I laughed. "You came all the way here to insult my tomatoes?" He smiled. "I missed being your father." That sentence broke something open inside me. Not in a painful way. In a healing way. Because I realized I didn't need my old family back. I needed honest relationships, even if they looked different. Even if they came with boundaries. Even if some doors stayed closed. The experience changed the way I saw money too. I stopped thinking of money as proof of love. I stopped apologizing for having savings. I stopped feeling guilty when I bought something for myself. I even took my first real vacation the following year. 7 days. No overtime. No emergency transfers. No checking my phone every 20 minutes. I sat beside the ocean with a book in my lap and realized something simple. I had spent 9 years trying to save a family that never told me it was drowning. But I had forgotten to save myself. That was the real lesson. Not that families can betray you. Not that money can destroy relationships. Not even that you should always question financial requests. The deeper lesson was this. Love without boundaries can become control. Generosity without honesty can become exploitation. And guilt is not the same thing as responsibility. If someone truly loves you, they won't demand that you destroy your future to prove your loyalty. They won't make you feel ashamed for succeeding. They won't ask you to sign away your security while hiding the truth. And they won't punish you for saying no. Sometimes the people closest to you will tell you that you're selfish when you finally protect yourself. Let them. Sometimes they'll call your boundaries disrespectful. Let them. Sometimes they'll say family should come first. Remember that you are part of the family too. You matter. Your future matters. Your peace matters. And saying no doesn't make you cruel. It means you finally understand that love should be given freely, not extracted through fear. I still have the old spreadsheet. 108 payments. $70,200. I keep it in a folder at the back of my desk. Not as evidence against my family. As evidence for myself. Evidence that I survived something I once thought I couldn't survive. Evidence that I learned to question what I was told. Evidence that I finally understood the difference between helping someone and losing myself to them. The last time my mother visited, she stood in my doorway. She looked around the house. Then she smiled. You built a good life. I looked at her. I did. She nodded. And for once, she didn't ask for anything. No money. No signature. No sacrifice. Just a quiet conversation between a mother and daughter who were learning how to know each other again. Before she left, she said, I'm proud of you. Years earlier, those words would have been everything I wanted. This time, they were simply nice to hear. Because I no longer needed my mother's approval to know my worth. I had already learned it myself. And as I closed the door behind her, I realized something I wish I'd understood at 21. You can love your family deeply and still choose yourself. You can forgive someone without giving them control over you again. You can walk away from a lie without becoming bitter. And sometimes, the greatest act of love isn't sacrificing everything you have for the people around you. Sometimes it's refusing to let them teach you that your life is worth less than theirs.